Wow, look at that cliff. So we can read the book of Luke chapter 4 from verse 14. Jesus rejected at Nazareth, his childhood hometown. Jesus returned to Galilee, and this is part of Galilee, in the power of the Spirit, and news about him spread through the whole countryside. He was teaching in their synagogue, and everyone praised him. He went to Nazareth. As I said, Nazareth is part of Galilee region because Galilee is divided into 3 parts. He went to Nazareth, that is Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And on this Sabbath day, he went into the synagogue, as was his custom. He stood up to read. We are going to the city later, and he stood up to read. And the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unscrolling it, he found the place where it is written, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of everyone in the synagogue was fastened on him. He began by saying to them, "Today the scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." All spoke well of him and were amazed at the gracious words that came from his lips. "Isn't this Joseph's son?" they asked. Jesus said to them, "Surely you will quote this proverb to me, 'Physician, heal yourself.' And you will tell me, 'Do here in your hometown what we have heard that you did in Capernaum.'" "Truly, I tell you," he continued, "no prophet is accepted in his hometown." Jesus' childhood hometown, Nazareth. I assure you that there was many windows in Israel in Elijah's time, when the sky was shut for 3.5 years, and there was a severe famine throughout the land. Yet Elijah was not sent to any of them, but to a window in Zarephath, in the town of Sidon. And there were many in Israel with leprosy in the time of Elisha the prophet, yet not one of them was cleansed, only Naaman the Syrian. All the people in the synagogue were furious when they heard this. They got up, drove him out of that town, yes, and took him to the brow of the hill on which the town was built. This hill, in order to throw him off the cliff, but he walked right through the crowd and went on his way. The city of Nazareth the hometown of Jesus Christ, childhood hometown. This is called Mount Precipice or Precipice. Here, the people of Nazareth were so much angered by Jesus Christ, and they brought him here, and they wanted to throw him off the cliff. But Jesus disappeared. Shalom, good people. This is Veronica. We are in Nazareth on Mount Precipice or Precipice, and here we read the book of Luke chapter 4 from verse 14 to 30. Verse 30, it says that, but he walked right through the crowd and went on his way. Where did Jesus go from here? Then he went down to Capernaum. So from Mount Precipice, we are heading to Capernaum. And we are going to continue reading the book of Luke chapter 4 from verse 31. So good people, let's take a road trip to Capernaum. God bless you. From Nazareth, and I'll show you a bit of the town of Nazareth on our way to Capernaum. This is part of the region of Galilee, and Capernaum is at the center region of Galilee. Wow, I like that flower. Wow, it's beautiful.
Jesus in central Galilee. This is a city of Tiberias, named after Emperor Tiberius during the Roman Empire. So Jesus is in central Galilee from Nazareth. Luke chapter 4, verse 31. Then he went down to Capernaum. That is where we are heading to, and we have to pass through Tiberias, the largest city on this side of Galilee, near the Sea of Galilee. Then he went down to Capernaum, a town in Galilee. And on the Sabbath, he taught the people. They were amazed at his teaching because his words had authority. In the synagogue, we are going to see the ruins of the synagogue where Jesus taught. In the synagogue, there was a man possessed by a demon, an impure spirit. He cried out at the top of his voice, "Go away! Go away! What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." "Be quiet," Jesus said sternly. "Come out of him." Then the demon threw the man down before them all and came out without injuring him. All the people were amazed and said to each other, "What words these are! With authority and power, he gives orders to impure spirits, and they come out." And the news about him spread throughout the surrounding area. When Jesus left the synagogue, he went to the home of Simon. We are going to see where the house of Simon was. Now, Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from high fever, and they asked Jesus to help her. So he bent over her and rebuked the fever, and it left her. She got up at once and began to wait on them. At sunset, the people brought to Jesus all who had various kinds of sickness, and laying his hands on each one, he healed them. Moreover, demons came out of many people, shouting, "You are the Son of God." But he rebuked them and would not allow them to speak, because they knew he was the Messiah. At daybreak, Jesus went out to a solitary place. The people were looking for him, and when they came where he was, they tried to keep him from leaving them. But he said, "I must proclaim the good news of the kingdom of God to the other towns also, because that is why I was sent." And he kept on preaching in the synagogues of Judea. So from Galilee, Jesus went to Judea, Kfar Nahum, or the village of Nahum. And this is the hometown of Peter, Andrew, and Matthew. Capernaum is an ancient city on the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee in Israel. It was Jesus' second hometown during the period of his life. His first hometown as a child was Nazareth, where we are coming from. And this Capernaum became the city or the town of Jesus, his second hometown. Jesus chose his first disciples here in Capernaum: Peter, Andrew, and Matthew. And Jesus performed many of his miracles here. Welcome.
Capernaum means Nahum's village. We find that this town called Capernaum is mentioned in the four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And it is also believed to be the hometown of Matthew the tax collector, Simon Peter, Andrew, James, and John. Also in this place, we find that on Shabbat, Jesus taught in the synagogue here and healed a man who was possessed by an unclean spirit. We find this in Luke 4, verse 31, or Mark 1, 21. Jesus also healed Simon Peter's mother-in-law of a fever. That is in Luke 4, 38. Jesus healed a servant of a Roman centurion at this city. Luke 7, 1, 10. Capernaum is also the location of the healing of the paralytic lowered by friends through the roof to reach Jesus. That is recorded in Mark 2, verse 1 to 12. Peter, when he was asked by Jesus 3 times, Peter, Simon Peter, do you love me? He said, yes, I love you. Jesus asked him again, Peter, do you love me? He said, yes, I love you. He asked him again another time, the third time, Peter, Simon Peter, do you love me? And he said, Jesus, you know I love you. And Jesus told him, feed my sheep. Thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. Matthew 16, verse 18. And he was given the key. Like Jesus was, some commentaries, it said that Peter was given the key because Jesus knew that he is going to be crucified, and he needed somebody to take the gospel, to continue with the gospel. So he insisted on calling Peter the rock and giving him the key so that he can continue with the mission. You see, Peter is identified with a fish. Remember, there was one time Peter didn't have money to pay the tax. And then Jesus told him, Peter, that fish that you got, just open the mouth of that fish. And Peter did as Jesus had told him. He opened the mouth of the fish, and from the mouth of the fish he found a coin. And from it, he paid his tax. So what belongs to Caesar, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. That is what Jesus taught them. Don't come to me and then start stealing from the government. You must pay your tax, even if you are a believer. So this is the house of Peter. They built a new one on top of where the house of Peter was. From it we can see the foundation of the old building. See? It's an amazing place. Capernaum. Capernaum is located on the northwest shore of Sea of Galilee. 16 kilometers northeast of modern Tiberias, 3 kilometers northeast of ancient Tabga. House of Saint Peter. You know, at this place, Jesus healed Peter's mother-in-law who was sick.
Luke chapter 4, verse 38 to 41. Jesus left the synagogue and went to the home of Simon. After this, we are heading to the place where the synagogue was. It's just a few meters from here. And went to the home of Simon. Now, Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever, and they asked Jesus to help her. So he bent over her and rebuked the fever, and it left her. She got up at once and began to wait on them.
So Jesus was teaching. This one was a synagogue.
Luke chapter 4, verse 33 to 36. Jesus in the synagogue here. Then in the synagogue there was a man possessed by a demon, an impure spirit. He cried out at the top of his voice, "Go away! What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." "Be quiet," Jesus said sternly. "Come out of him." Then the demon threw the man down before them all and came out without injuring the man. All the people were amazed and said to each other, "What words these are! With authority and power, he gives orders to impure spirits, and they come out."
Jesus finally cast Capernaum along with Bethsaida and Chorazin, saying, "You will be thrown down to Hades." Matthew 11:23. Because of their lack of belief or lack of their faith in him as the Messiah. You find that in this place, Capernaum, that is where most of the miracles of Jesus were performed, and that he called his first disciples. Wow. The lowest fresh lake on earth, Sea of Galilee.
Tabga, St. Peter's Primacy. Okay, sunod lang sa akin, ano? Merong tatlong biblical significance itong place na to, and we will discuss everything there pagbaba natin. Okay, so mukhang maraming tao.
Church of the Primacy of Saint Peter.
Okay. Tara, sunod lang sa akin.
Jesus meets his disciples at the Sea of Galilee after resurrection, and we find that they were fishing, but they had caught nothing.
It was Simon Peter. Verse 3 says, Peter says, I'm going out to fish. Simon Peter told them, and they said, we'll go with you. So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Verse 15, Jesus reinstates Peter. Remember, during the crucifixion of Jesus, Peter denied Jesus. Now Jesus here is reinstating Peter. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than this? Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. At that time, he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him at that time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. Verily, verily, I tell you, when you were young, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, follow me. You can continue with the reading and see what happened later. Then we still have the story of the calling of the 4 disciples. First, there were 2 disciples that were called by Jesus, by the first 2 disciples that Jesus called. Then he moved on and met other 2. As Jesus walked along the shores of Lake Galilee, he saw 2 brothers who were fishermen, Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew, catching the fish in the lake with a net. Jesus said to them, come with me, and I'll teach you to fish people. At once they left their nets and went with him. He went on and saw 2 other brothers, James and John, the sons of Zebedee. They were in their boat with their father Zebedee, getting their nets ready. Jesus called them, and at once they left the boat and their father and went with him. Tabga, the church of primacy of Peter. Let us repeat together with Peter his heartfelt and yet sincere acclamation. Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. John chapter 21, verse 17. Here, where Jesus confirms the primacy of Peter. Church of Saint Peter Primacy at Tabga, where Jesus restored Peter at the shores of the Sea of Galilee.
Okay na? Sino bang ano? Dali na. Dito po tayo sa Peter denied niya. Ano?
He's restored by Jesus. Yes, because rejection, denial is in Jerusalem.
Here is
restoration.
Mag-lecture daw si Madam. Dati tayo na kuliga, galing dito.
It's a horrid crowd.
Chegado nada à noite. Jesus estava aqui, uma fogueira assando. E Jesus perguntou a ele: pegasse eles estão trabalhando a noite toda com nada assando. E aí Jesus aí é um lugar muito marcado, foi a realização. Mas quando Jesus veio aqui e viu que Pedro não tinha, e viu que eles não tinham pegado nada, ele já tinha estar dentro,
mas Jesus estava aqui, aguardando Pedro, ou esperando para ter aquele diálogo que foi Pedro, caminhando, Pedro, sim, senhor.
We have another story in the Bible about Jesus feeding the 5,000 men. It could have happened here, or there is another church up there.
We have another opportunity.
It's called the Church of Multiplication, and that is where we are going. This is where we are heading to.
Animal I showed you, it's the only mammal that can eat this plant, the poisoning one.
Matthew 14 verse 13 to 21. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so that they can go to their villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. They answered, "Bring them here to me," he said. And he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Thank you guys, thank you so much. I love you so much, and I'll see you again in a few days time from Tabga.